What is going on, everyone? My name's Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 23 preview. So as always, I've asked you guys for questions, topics going into Game Week 23, and I'm going to discuss them here. Quite a lot of keep and sell questions this week, especially as we look towards the kind of double game. We can try and figure out how we're going to get Liverpool players in, and of course I'm going to discuss captaincy as well. Before we jump into that, I did want to say the video has kindly been sponsored once again by OneFootball. If you have not already checked them out, it's a completely free football app, team news, lineup news, football news, general kind of football news, as well as live scores on the weekend. There's obviously plenty more matches to come for this FPL season, so make sure you give it a download. There's a link in the description below. Like I said, it's completely free, or search OneFootball on the Android iOS stores. Give it a go, see what you think. So first up, we've got Brighton Fixtures, and basically the question was posed as, are they a trap or not? Obviously on paper they look pretty good. Next four: Villa at home, Bournemouth away, West Ham away, and Watford at home. So pretty good when you look at them on paper. Obviously on the fixture difficulty rating, whether you pay attention to that or not, they're all pretty much green. I think for attack and returns, they're pretty good. I don't think it's that much of a trap at all. I think Villa and Bournemouth over the last 4 game weeks have conceded the most amount of shots in the box. Bournemouth definitely in a spot of trouble right now. And we've seen Villa, I know it was Man City, obviously a much better team than Brighton, but put 6 past them. And like I said, Villa have been conceding shots in the box all season. I don't really see that changing against Brighton. If you look at kind of who would you bring in, you've got Trossard as a bit of a punt in midfield, and Morpay, you could even say he's a bit of a punt because he's not been performing well recently, and hasn't been shooting much in the box in the last few fixtures. But it is worth noting, over the last 4, they've played Spurs, Bournemouth, Chelsea and Everton, whereas earlier in the season when the fixtures were a little bit easier, he was getting quite a bit of shot volume off. So I think there is chance for him to improve going into the fixtures that they've got. But the way he's been performing recently has not been great. So I can see why people are a bit put off by him. And obviously, for a very similar price, you can get Calvert-Lewin at Everton as well, who's been performing well. From a defensive point of view, maybe not really, I don't want to use the word trap, but maybe they are a bit more difficult than they look at. Again, on paper they look good, but they played West Ham and Watford over the last 4 weeks. They're 5th and 6th for shots in the box, so they've actually been performing quite well from an attacking point of view. And Brighton in the same time, 6th worst in terms of shots conceded. So the teams they're playing are shooting quite a bit, and Brighton are letting in plenty of shots. So for clean sheets, I'm not too sure about them. Obviously, people looking at Matt Ryan, Lewis Dunn, they could be good options, but I think attack-wise is probably where it's at for Brighton at the moment. Hopefully the fixtures will convert into goals, especially the next 2. And you know, it could just be overthinking. The fixtures look good on paper, and they could perform well given that they're the fixtures that they've got. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think if you're looking at bringing Brighton players in, I don't think it's too much of a risk. Mahrez and Aguero, I think massive round of applause basically for anyone that bought them in last week, especially if you captained them. Absolutely huge returns, even if you didn't captain them, to be fair. And I talk, obviously people want to know whether to bring them in, and I talk about fixtures quite a lot, I know I do, and obviously with the form City in, maybe we should just completely ignore it. And yes, it was Aston Villa, like I said, that they played, conceding plenty of shots, 6 goals, but it kind of did remind us just how good City are when they're absolutely on it, and obviously Mahrez carried on the good form that he's had. But let's talk about those fixtures. So Palace at home, decent enough this week. Sheffield United away and Spurs away. Now Sheffield United has been a pretty tough fixture. Liverpool did okay against them, only scored 2 goals, but they were constantly attacking. Maybe Man City will be able to unlock them as well. But away from home, tough fixture, but Pep has played them once now this season. Maybe he's got some ideas for how he can kind of penetrate that defence. And Spurs away, now I would have said that was okay a couple of weeks ago, but then they played Liverpool and did okay defensively. Mourinho had a plan and kind of worked out pretty well. They didn't win the game, of course, but they kept Liverpool down to 1 goal. So maybe they could do similar against Man City, although I do think it'd be tough. And then West Ham at home kind of bookends those 4 fixtures. So I think they're okay. The problem is, who is going to play? And this is the problem we always have with Man City players. Now maybe it doesn't matter. If you can bring Mahrez in, you've got a bench to cope with him missing out, then perhaps you can. He's not really played too many minutes against the top 6. That could be a coincidence. Maybe there's good reason why he didn't play earlier on in the season, but he could miss that Spurs game maybe and just play the other 3. He could just play 2 out of 4. You just don't know. Sterling's missed the last 2 games. Who would have thought that in the Premier League? And then you think he's going to start this week, but can you be 100% sure? I don't know. So I think Aguero actually looks like a pretty good captain again this week. I think Mahrez, if he plays, looks really good, but that is always going to be the key question. So if you're okay with that, spending 8.4 million on Mahrez, bearing in mind he's still one of the top scoring midfielders, even with his lack of minutes. When he plays 90 minutes, he scores absolutely well. Then by all means, bring him in. I just think, for me, and this is just the kind of way I play, the fixtures are not amazing, and I'm not confident he's going to start every game, and so that would be enough to put me off. Doesn't mean it should put you off. In terms of Sterling, obviously keep or sell, because he, like I said, he has missed the last 2 Premier League games, and obviously the kind of thinking with Man City is if they didn't play the last one, they'll probably play the next one. That obviously hasn't worked. 2 misses in a row now for him. I do think if you already... I wouldn't be bringing him in, I don't think, at the moment. I think there's better options out there anyway. But if you already own him, I think it's last chance saloon. You give him this week against Crystal Palace at home, missed the last 2 games, there's every chance that he starts the next one. And obviously, Salah and Mane are big priorities because of the double game week. I'm not sure they're a massive priority this week, which we're going to talk about a little bit later when it comes to captaincy. So for me, I'll give Sterling one more week and then reassess from there and maybe look to move to a Liverpool midfielder instead. And then another kind of stick or twist, Jimenez. And the postman basically has stopped delivering. No attacking return since game week 19. Now, he only got 18 minutes versus Liverpool, then played Newcastle and Watford, which are tough enough fixtures, but you still expect something from those couple of games, but haven't had anything so far. And the next lot of fixtures don't look really that good either. So Southampton away, and their defensive stats have been really good recently. Liverpool, Man United, Leicester. And obviously you can say that Leicester, obviously conceded lots of shots against Southampton, and Ndidi's out. But, I still think that's a tricky game for Jimenez and Wolves. So I'm not liking the look of the fixtures, and he hasn't been doing too well in the last couple of game weeks. Before that, he was very consistent. If you look at the underlying stats, 8 shots in the box is okay over the last 4 game weeks, especially given that he's had limited minutes. It's actually the same as Doherty in defence, which is interesting. And he's also quite high up for goal attempts, so 13 goal attempts I think it is, which puts him quite high up in forwards. So unless you don't own Ings, because I do think Ings is probably the number 1 priority, even when he's playing Wolves this week, then I don't think he's a must-sell necessarily for Southampton away, despite how good they've been defensively. But he's not probably the kind of season keeper that he was kind of being talked about in the last few weeks. So fixtures aren't great. Form is a little bit off, although it's only a few games. So you could get rid of him if you've got other plans, but I don't think he's a must-sell this week. So keeping along the lines of kind of stick or twist, keep or sell, we've got what to do with Rashford. A few people looking at getting rid, maybe a few people looking at keeping now. I think it's quite a funny one. I was talking about this on Twitter, and I'm not saying it's the same for everyone. You may have had different thoughts and opinions, and they may not have changed. But there was quite a bit of frustration after the Arsenal game with him that he blanked in that game. And people kind of only kept him, I think, or some people only kept him because it was Norwich at home. And I think that was the right call, much easier fixture than Arsenal. And obviously he delivered as expected. But obviously now people have suddenly changed their minds that they're keeping him, even though it's Liverpool away, who've just kept 6 clean sheets. And it's going to be very hard for Man United to score at Anfield in that. And if you look at the fixtures after it, again, I know I'm talking about fixtures quite a lot, but I don't think they're actually that good for Man United. So Burnley at home is decent after Liverpool. Wolves at home, you could argue that's a good fixture. But even if Wolves aren't performing as well as they have been earlier in the season, they're still not a team that I would expect to concede too many goals. And of course, a striker like Rashford only needs 1 goal, 3 bonus points. And obviously you're super happy with that. 9 points is decent enough, nothing to be sniffed at. But Wolves at home is not a great fixture. Chelsea away, who knows how that would end up. Watford at home would have been a good fixture, not so much now. Everton away, Man City at home, Spurs away. So yes, he's done well in big matches. We saw that against Man City already this season. Doesn't mean it's obviously going to repeat itself. But in terms of a fixture run, whether or not he can do well in big fixtures or not, that's not a great run after Liverpool away. So he has been consistent for most of the season, and like I said, he has scored big, or has scored in big games, I should say. So I do think there is a reason to keep him. I think he's on penalties, and like we saw at the weekend, all it takes is 1 penalty, quickly adds up to a big haul. Obviously, he only got 1 goal from open play, but still came away with a nice 12 points. So I don't think it's an absolute, again, I don't think he's a must-sell at all, but if you already have plans to sell him, for example, I own him, and I have plans to sell him. And I think I'm going to sell him. I think Liverpool away, I'm not expecting too many points there. Burnley at home would be my worry. After that, it's not the kind of easiest fixture run, and I'm just hoping I can put the money elsewhere. Now, I'm going to more pay, I think. Still not confirmed that, but that's where I'm looking, because it's such a big price difference. And Morpay's got Aston Villa at home, Bournemouth away. Great time to play those 2 teams. And it lets me put money elsewhere for Liverpool. It lets me do that easily without having to completely hack apart my team. Now, you might have a different scenario. Maybe you've got the money elsewhere. Maybe you're already set with 3 Liverpool players. And by all means, keep him. But I do think if you already had the kind of plans to sell him, there's no massive big deal with doing that. But you could get burnt. He has been really good this season. He is on penalties. And him and Martial are playing well. So maybe he'll carry on doing well. But the fixtures are not really there for it, I don't think. Soyuncu again, not really in a rush to sell him either. I own him already. Burnley away and West Ham at home up next are pretty good. Ndidi is out, which is a bit of a problem because he really does protect that back 4, but he will be back by game week 25. The only problem is, if you're kind of thinking, I can't play Soyuncu for the next 2, or I'm not confident with clean sheets, but Ndidi's back, in a couple of weeks. Well, then they played Chelsea, Wolves and Man City. So another kind of mini fixture run that isn't actually that good. So it could potentially be 5 games where either you don't want to play him or you're not super confident about getting points from him. So it could be a bit of a sell. Obviously, from game week 25, Sheffield United have pretty good fixtures. So you could look for a double up there. So for me, I got him quite cheap. I got him when he was kind of 4.5, 4.6 million. So again, not really in a rush to sell. I don't have to play him every single week, especially when Sheffield United's fixtures turn. Because especially if you're on Liverpool double defence as well, because you can play those two plus Lundstram or whichever Sheffield United defender you may have. Maybe you've got an Everton defender. Then you don't necessarily have to play Soyuncu. So again, because if it was like Pereira or Chilwell and they were quite highly priced, I think more about moving them on because you can use that money better. But when you've got a player for kind of 4.6, 4.7 million, it's maybe not so much of a rush. At least that's how I would be thinking about it. Overlooking Firmino for the double game week. Yes, we're talking about the double game week again. This has come up a lot recently, and we tend to see this with double game weeks. We're running out of things to discuss. We know that Mane, Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson are probably the odds-on to score the most points. It may not happen, but that's how it is. Van Dijk could do well, Gomez could do well, Firmino could do well, etc., etc. Wijnaldum could score a hat-trick. Who knows? But the 4 that we know are most likely to score are the 4. Mane, Robertson, Salah, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, that doesn't mean that Firmino is being overlooked. He could be a good option, and he could do well in the double game week. There's all these stats about how many points he's got away from home, how many goals he's got away from home, and I can't dispute that. But there's no reason why he suddenly won't start scoring in home matches and maybe not score as many away from home. He could absolutely smash it in the double, but let's not forget as well, the key reason we're bringing in Liverpool is because 1, they got a double game week, 2, they're extremely good at football and they get lots of FPL points. And 3, they've got really good fixtures after the double. So if you want Firmino for the double and you're happy to keep him, or you have an exit plan after the double to get rid of him, then that's absolutely fair enough. You should carry on with that plan. If you don't, just think about those fixtures. Which 3 do you want? If that includes Firmino, great. If it doesn't, maybe rethink and kind of realise that's maybe why he's being overlooked a bit. But this does tend to start happening with double game weeks. We're running out of things to kind of discuss. So every little eventuality will now creep out. Maybe Liverpool will concede goals in both games. Maybe Salah's the best option on Mane, etc., etc. I wouldn't panic too much. If you've made your decision, just stick with it. The only thing I can think of as well, if you are looking to get rid of Rashford, obviously it is a bit of a straight swap straight to Firmino. So that could be one to look at. But for me, I'm not going for him. I just think longer term, he's not the one I want. I want to spend my money on the other 3 at least of the other 4. That's my opinion anyway. And then goalkeeper replacement. So I'm looking for a replacement for Fabianski. Obviously got injured. He's out for a couple of weeks now. He's probably going to miss 1 or both the games in the double game week, which is super frustrating. And obviously some people are looking at Pope replacements as well. I think fixtures after game week 25 for Fabianski, they got Brighton at home in game week 25, but after that pretty poor. So I don't think there's any really good reason to keep him. I think the front runners for me are Foster, Ryan, Henderson and McCarthy. I've actually written an article on Fantasy Football Scout if you want to go and read that afterwards. Leno and Dubravka, I'm just not sure about Arsenal if I trust them enough, and I don't know if they're both worth the extra outlay. McCarthy very much cheaper than the rest. He's 4.3 million at the time of recording. Next 3 fixtures aren't great: Wolves, Crystal Palace and Liverpool, but after that they're pretty damn good until game week 32. Ryan has good initial fixtures, but I've kind of already spoken about maybe on paper they don't look as good, or they're not as good as they look defensively. And Henderson, I do like him, potential for a double up from kind of game week 25 onwards, but the next 2 fixtures are Arsenal away and Man City at home. So the ideal would have been to get him in last week and just put up with these 2 fixtures, but I'm not sure I can now. So I think any of those options are good. I think Foster, the only thing that worries me about him is since Pearson took over, obviously they've kept 4 clean sheets in 7 games, but they've got an expected goals conceded of 8.25, I think it is. But they've only conceded 4 goals, so they probably should have conceded a couple more. And maybe that regression will happen, especially with the tougher fixtures that Watford have got now. So I'm avoiding him. I think it's between the other 3, Ryan, Henderson and McCarthy. And McCarthy just saves some money, good underlying stats for Southampton. That's where I'm putting my money. Captaincy I think is tough again this week, but I like it. It's given us reason to go different, maybe go away from the crowd. And obviously there's still players like De Bruyne and Vardy that are going to be massively captain. But it's not a massive standout option like Vardy when he had that great run of form, scoring every single week, and you kind of had to captain him. It's different now, and it has been for a few weeks. That might change in a couple of weeks when Liverpool got great fixtures. You can see a lot of Salah or Mane perma-captains. But right now it's tricky and interesting, and I like it. Now, if you've watched enough of my videos or you've been here long enough, you know what I'm going to say already about Liverpool versus Man United. I don't like captaining players in these fixtures. Say whatever you like about Man United. They've only conceded more than 2 goals once this season even, and the reverse fixture was 1-1. Now, Salah wasn't playing in that, so it could be a bit different. Obviously, this is at Anfield as well, but I'm not expecting it to be a massively high-scoring game, especially if Liverpool don't score early. Obviously, that will draw Man United out. They do want to play on the counter, but I just think if Liverpool don't score easy, or early, I should say, then it could be another low-scoring affair. They got a 1-0 against Spurs. They've won a good few games 2-1 already, and that's the kind of scoreline that I would be expecting. So I don't feel confident captaining Mane. I wouldn't even Salah either, and I wouldn't be captaining Man United players against the best defence in the league right now either. So that's not a fixture that I like personally. Man City Palace is probably the best one. De Bruyne, if you own him, I captained him last week, 2 assists, came away with 9 points. Came off after 62 minutes as well, so he's had a bit of a rest. You'd expect him to start the next game. Aguero obviously looks good. I said he was a bit of a punt last week. Again, another nice, maybe less of a punt now, but he's still going to be quite low owned by live teams. So if you want to get him in and captain, I think it looks a good shout. But you have got that worry. Him and Jesus both started the last game. Sterling didn't. If Sterling comes in, who misses out? You just don't know. My assumption would be that Aguero will play. And he'll carry on playing now more often than not, given how good he is. I think Jesus is a great player, or a very good player. I just don't think he's Aguero levels. And I think while Aguero's still got it, Pep's going to play him more often than not. So I like that option. Very fantastic. Same with Mahrez, but again, I would just have that worry about who's going to start. But I like De Bruyne, because I think we can be more assured that he's going to. Watford versus Spurs. So I just talked about Watford. Yes, defensively they've done well under Pearson, but maybe should have conceded a few more than they have. And Spurs actually looked quite good against Liverpool. Should have scored in that game. Didn't. Probably get a few more chances against Watford than they did against Liverpool. So I like Son as an option. He'd be my punt there. He's back. Could be a short-term punt. Watford away, Norwich at home. Then it's Man City, but then they play Villa after that. So the next 4 fixtures aren't bad for Son if you've got the cash to bring him in. I think he's only less than 7% owned, and he would be the one I'd look out for Spurs. And then Burnley versus Leicester. Maybe Vardy has finally lost it. Maybe it's just regression. His stats were unsustainable, etc., etc. Burnley are 5th for shots conceded, like 5th worst in the last 4. In the box, that is. But they have played Everton, United and Chelsea, so not easy fixtures. And it's one of those games like in the past I wouldn't have wanted to captain a player, but Vardy only needs 1 chance, 1 shot, 1 goal, 3 bonus points, and that could happen against Burnley. Indeed, he being out, I think it hurts the attack as well as the defence. I think he presses, he wins the ball back quickly, lets them transition back into attack more often than not. So I do think he's a miss for attack as well as defence. So definitely not. If this was a few weeks ago, you'd absolutely captain Vardy. I don't think he's a standout option this week, and I think Burnley could make it tough, but they've been in a bit of a poor run of form themselves. So I do think he's a good captain. I think De Bruyne is probably the standout this week. Maybe put Vardy in second place if you're not too sure about captain and Aguero. But yeah, he's got to be a good option against Burnley. And like I said, there's not really too many other standout options apart from Danny Ings against Wolves. Maybe he's just the one we should go for. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Much appreciated as always. Subscribe if you're new around here, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about what I've said. Have I got it wrong? Am I looking at the fixtures too much? Which of those players I've mentioned would you keep or sell? How is your planning coming along for the Liverpool double game week? And if you haven't already tried out OneFootball, make sure you do. There's a handy link in the description below. You can just click that and it'll take you straight through to the app or App Store on iOS or Android, or you can just go and search OneFootball. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Stream tomorrow, Thursday, 9 o'clock. Otherwise, good luck in the game week, and I'll catch you next time.